Welcome back to another Union Arena Deck Tech video. Today we have ProDmJoey joining us to talk about the Elric Brothers deck from Fullmetal Alchemist. Joey?
Hello.
Yeah, so let's talk about this deck. It's one of the newer ones. It officially releases out tomorrow. Let's go over it. Tell me about it.
So, Elric Brothers is a combo aggro deck that is very good at pushing consistent damage, and if you can find a good lineup and draw to be able to have your finishers, being able to end the game very quickly. I would absolutely call this an aggro deck.
Now, with it being an aggro deck, a lot of those decks have low to the floor cost characters. They can, they can start facing challenges once they see the 4K wall. How does this deck deal with that?
It goes wider or removes some of the 4K blockers very easily. It has multiple ways to either buff your characters up to 4Ks. If they aren't 4Ks already, a lot of your cards just happen to be 4Ks, as well as having a handful of ways to remove blockers that your opponent may have that can protect themselves.
So, stepping right into that, let's go over your ratios you have here. Tell us about these cards here.
Oh yeah, so this one we have a typical 11-3, which is a little on the lighter side, but because we're playing 4 draw discarders and the 3 searchers as your ones, I feel like we can get away with only 14 ones and zeros. Moving past that, we have 6 2-drops, but, well, this one's an event that we save for later. Winry, which is a fantastically overpowered card, very overtuned, very strong, very consistent. It's one of the ways to buff up your characters. For double energy producers, we only have 6 in the deck, which is perfectly fine because we're only playing a tech piece of 1 5 cost. Everything else is 4. But all of your double energy producers are searchable, which is a fantastic feature in the deck. We have the Edward, who can look at the top 2, put any number into your sideline. Very good in these aggro decks where you're like, well, I don't need any more zeros. Get rid of them. We have Gateway of Truth, which on play, if you have an Alphonse or an Edward in play already, draw 2, discard 2. Fantastic card as well. And on top of that, we have the Raid Edwards, which have their own abilities to either search cards or replay Alphonses from your sidelines. Very, very strong package overall. That is the aggro portion of this deck. Everything over here is what makes it super aggressive.
Now, speaking of the Edward package, I know there's been a lot of questions, with a lot of people seeing a new mechanic that this deck does. I call it derating, unrating, removing raid state. Can you talk to us about the 2 Edward cards and kind of what they do and how that derating mechanic works?
Yes, let's start with the one that is less good than the other one, just to clarify. I forget which one came in which package. I believe this one was the starter deck, the Searcher?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, this one is better. Hands down, it is one of the best raiders printed in recent years. It is a fantastically good card. This Ed says, when you raid him, you can choose one of 2 effects. The first one is you draw 2 cards and then discard a card, which is fantastic in these aggro style decks. Again, you just want to be filtering through your deck to find the pieces that allow you to combo and kill your opponent. But on the other hand, if you've already found your pieces, the next line of text is what matters. You de-raid the Ed, which means you get this card, put it into the sideline. It no longer has anything inside the box, but you still resolve the ability that you have chosen. That ability is you get to play an Alphonse from your sideline that costs 3 or less and put it into play immediately. So for 1 card being raided, you get 2 cards worth of value. And, well, all of your Alphonses cost 3 or less the majority of time in this deck. So this one, the one downside to him is when you deraid him, he no longer has the potential to be a 4K body on his own. He becomes a 3.5K, which is perfectly fine. And this Alphonse, which is your color trigger, is the card that synergizes with that so well. If you have the Gateway of Truth in play, he costs 3 while in your sideline. And getting to play him with Edward is just backbreaking for your opponent to get good blocks. The other Edward is your finisher, your searcher, your card advantage, your good body, everything that you have. This is the best card in the deck. When you raid him, you either keep him as is, as a 4K impactor, who's permanently impact, no longer that selective crap people deal with, or you take away the Ed from underneath it, and then you search the top 6 for any character you want, including more of him, or more raid targets for the ones that you have in your hand, or the Alphonses, or the one of Scar, or your other double energy. Whatever character you want, he is the toolbox that allows you to get to it.
Now, you lose the impact if you do the search, but in my opinion, I think you'd probably agree, the search is very valuable. It's any character, no discard downside, correct?
That is correct. No discard.
Right.
It's just straight card advantage.
Yep.
I would love to turn my 0-cost Edward into a random card.
100%. Now, with that 3,500 Edward, I know it's kind of that awkward number. You have the 4K walls, but you actually have Winry to really just deal with that and basically not matter that you unrated him, essentially, right?
Yes, so Winry is a fantastically overtuned and powerful card. We love her. She is fantastic. She has one of the best ult arts in the entire game. I'm going to get a play set of that. Don't you worry. But if you have an Edward on the front line, she's a double energy producer. So double energy producer, 2-drop, who has an active trigger. That is an insane line of text to have on a card. The next part of her is you can active main switch her to resting to give target character plus 500 until end of turn. So this 3.5k Ed, well, look at that. He's a 4k all of a sudden.
Yeah, more or less that fixes the issue with him being weaker. Now, you still obviously can't do it when he's defending, but we do see there's not that many 3,500, so it's not as much of a big deal. So I see that basically derating that Edward pretty much being every time do it. I don't really know any many situations where you wouldn't, but obviously the Winry is there for support.
Yeah, now we have an additional Winry as well. Sorry, some people don't like playing her. She's only a 500, but she has a draw trigger and win played plus 1,000. There's been a lot of times where she was the card I searched off this Ed to force my opponent into poor blocks. She's a fantastic card as well.
Okay, and you run that as a how many of? Is that a 1 of or a 3 of? Sorry.
She's a 3 of. This stack doesn't have 3 in it currently. I have a different iteration I'm testing with. This is just what is the deck.
Understood. Okay. Continuing on that line, though, with the Gate of Truth and playing out those Alphonse, can you kind of explain what each of them do when you play them out of the grave?
Oh, yeah. So this Alphonse, if he is played by one of your effects, either by your 4-drop Edward or this Let's Go Home card, you draw a card. Already fantastic value off of this Ed. Get 2 bodies. They're both 3.5Ks, but you only actually paid 1 action that turn, and you draw a card. But the other part of him that is busted is you can place 2 cards from your hand into your sideline in order to restand him and give him plus 500, meaning he can be a 3-drop 4K rusher coming down for only 1 AP and 2 cards from your hand. But in all honesty, this deck generates such good card advantage. Okay.
Now, what about the other one? What about the 4-drop?
This one is an absurdly good card. So if Gate of Truth is in play, he only costs 3 energy while in your sideline, not from your hand, so keep that in mind. He is always a nullify impactor, so if you're in a matchup like, I'm sorry to say this, Giant Dad, Code Geass, you can just willy-nilly chump block with him and really not care. He's okay, I guess I don't take damage. Fantastic card. But when played, if you play him from your hand, you get to choose one of the 2 effects by paying 1 AP, restanding him, or paying 1 AP, tapping one of your opponent's cards. Where the card becomes really broken is when you play him from your sideline utilizing your Ed or your Let's Go Home. You can pay that 1 AP, but you get both effects. So you just provided a 4K rusher who removed a blocker that your opponent had, which is another reason the 3.5 doesn't really care if your opponent has blockers, because, okay, how many 4Ks do you have? If it's more than 1, I'm probably not doing so hot anyways. So yeah, just tap that.
So realistically, both of these Alphonse are more or less free discard. You know, you get so much value out of the recursion. Whenever you draw tossing, just go and get rid of them.
Oh yeah. Sure. The zero cost discarder, the searcher discarder, you don't care. You're just getting rid of them. I've had turns where I had this Alphonse come down on turn 3 against my opponent. I sidelined 2 of these Elrics to smash them. And then the next turn, I was able to chain Ed finals and that other Alphonse to just fill up my board and smash my opponent. And they only had 2 blockers. Yeah, the cards are really, really good together.
Now you mentioned the Let's Go Home card earlier. Can you kind of tell me what that does? I'm actually not super familiar with that card.
Oh, so this is a card that a lot of people don't like because it doesn't have a trigger and does not provide a body technically. But it does provide a body. So Let's Go Home. It says add up to 1 Edward or Alphonse card from your sideline to your hand. Play up to 1 Edward, Elric, or Alphonse card with fulfilled require energy and 1 AP cost from your hand set to resting onto your field. Or perform raid with it. So this is the reason it is so impossible for your opponent to have good plays against you playing any of the heavy reactive removal decks. I'm able to push through damage, force you to chump block with your weenies that are going to be retaliating. You don't have good targets to remove because this card is in my deck. If you remove my Raider, the next turn, if I have more Alphonses in my sideline, I'm going to play Let's Go Home, re-raid Ed, get back my Alphonse, tap your bro, untap this guy, and smash into you again. Or even more terrifying for you, if I got this guy back, the Searcher, and I'm able to start chaining card advantage against you as well. All of a sudden, I'm drawing more threats than the removal decks have removal in their decks. And the fact that this Alphonse has nullify impact means it's very hard for my opponent to get through me so long as I'm able to keep up the momentum of pressure and chump block with him just to make sure I don't die.
No, that's a solid plan there. I mean, I'd say it's a good thing that card doesn't have a trigger because that would be super busted in my opinion. If it
what? Let's Go Home? Yeah. Hand
to hand, get trigger. Oh
yeah, boy. Toto has this exact card, but it costs 3 and it has a trigger. So yeah.
Now, last tech card I do see a very nice alt art Scar. Let's talk about him.
Oh yes. So only a 1 of in the deck. That is because this deck is so incredibly tight. It is so difficult for me to reasonably find a spot to play more of him. But I think this card is incredibly powerful into the current meta that we are dealing with, that you need to play him. So for 5 energy and 2 actions, you get to play him set to active and rest one of your opponent's characters. Again, very good aggressive card for what you are trying to do inside of your deck. Then, if you have 7 or more energy, he has impact plus 1000. That's almost never going to happen in this deck. But the really good portion of him is, even in the mirror, when he attacks, your opponent has to choose 2 cards in their sideline and put them at the bottom of their deck. It is so backbreaking to so many different purple strategies, Sukuna finger strategies, all of those things, that this card gets to whittle away your opponent's sideline, and they don't get all of their incredible value that they usually do from it. It is a tech piece because we have 4 searchers that search the top 6. It's worth it to have him as a 1 of.
For sure, it sounds like you pretty reasonably get to that. If you search for an Edward, pull the Edward, search for another one, and keep doing that chain, you are bound to see that card pretty reliably, honestly. Yeah,
it's the 1 of that if you need it, you'll find it. Unless it's stuck in your life, in which case, okay, that's fine. Active trigger, let's go.
Yep, there you go. So, kind of talking about this being the aggro deck, when you are drawing your opening hand, what is the 1 card you want to see, whether in your opening hand or in your first few draws? Like, what's the 1 card that's like, I need this ASAP?
Winry. That card, the sooner you get it onto the field, the more powerful your deck becomes. Anybody who's smart against this deck knows even if you're losing value because you're not raiding, you need to put 4Ks on the front line because eventually my cards do start getting smaller. If I have Winry in play, that is an additional 4K you need to be able to start blocking something else. Or you need 4.5s to block my 3.5s now to not be losing even more. I think having her in your early draw is so incredibly important for this deck that she's a mandatory 4 of. Again, she has an active trigger. You're not hurting by playing her, and she has one of the prettiest alt arts in the game. Like, come on, that's just so pretty. So good.
Speaking of triggers, how many triggers does the deck have?
42 in this current iteration, but I'm going to be honest with you, it's probably going down to 40. There is... For the way I like playing, 42 is perfect, but I always like to add in the caveat of if you want to make changes or adjustments, go ahead and do it. Having more Edwards is never a bad thing. So you either add in these 2 Eds, which are the best raid targets that you have because they're both versatile. One says, I look at the top 2 and sideline those. If you're sidelining Alphonse's, woohoo! And if you're not sidelining it, it's a good card. Okay. And the other one being a searcher to the top 4. You can add in these guys, which puts you down to 40 triggers. You either do that, or you play the 2-drop Ed that has Step, and I think in our current meta, Step is not that valuable, but in future ones, Step is still going to be really good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely for newer players as well. My deck building philosophy, as well as a lot of others as well, is just cards have to have a trigger, and if they don't have a trigger, they have to have a very good reason to be in the deck. Playing the top tier decks, JJK, Code Geass, decks are pushing 46 plus triggers.
Yeah,
you start going on at 40, it almost feels unplayable because every time you get smacked for life, you get nothing out of it. It's brutal.
Yeah. But on the other hand, this is one of those aggro decks that your triggers don't really matter as much. If you get 1 or 2 good ones in life, you're solid. But if you get 4 misses, yeah, who cares? It's only when you're in a mirror match of aggro that really suffers.
For sure. Now, going into gameplay of this deck, so you mentioned some of the combos, using the Edward and Alphonse recursion. Are there any other kind of strategies or combat tricks that you're pulling off with this deck?
There is one other strategy that I really want everybody to know about. Gate of Truth has more text on it. In 90% of your matches, its additional text does not matter. You're not going to do it. But you can switch it to resting, lose one of your lives in order to search the top 6 for a character card and put it to your hand. So you pay a life to get yourself a character within the top 6. Now, in the majority of your matches, you are never, ever, ever going to do that against anybody because paying life for a card is not worth it. It's a 1-for-1. It's not good. If it added the card to your hand instead of you losing the life, maybe, but it doesn't, so it's not worth it in my opinion. However, if you're playing against any of those decks that are like, I don't want you to have good life triggers, I'm going to not attack you. Green Saitama, the tree from Black Clover, playing any of those style of stall decks, yeah, this card's going to be an MVP for you. Screw my life. I don't care about it. I'm going to lose this life one way or another and search out that card advantage to be able to crush them. It is something to be aware of that you can do.
Got to clarify again, too, that life you pay is straight to sideline, correct? You don't get that to your hand. You don't get the trigger. It's just right in the sideline, correct?
Well, you're the judge. Place 1 card from your life area into your sideline.
Correct. That would be no trigger effect right to the sideline. So just much like for some people, if they have to use a Sakuna finger without a UG on board, it just goes right to the trash. You don't get any effects off of it. So it is a pretty punishing effect. And I would agree with you in most cases that is pretty bad. But having the choice to search 6 cards is still a pretty strong effect, all things considered. I know we saw that with the yellow decks of SAO. Boros was an interesting one. Take a life card, add to hand, draw 2, discard 1. Those are pretty good, but in a pinch, I mean, you start getting down to that 2 life versus 2 life. That could be a difference. You pull that Scar, you pull the raid Edward with the impact. I mean, that does give you options when you need to close out the game. So I could see it being not always used, but in certain situations you might use it.
I will say though, if you're down to 2 life and you have a path to victory based off of one specific top deck, you will, in my opinion, be called a hero for losing that life and searching instead of AP drawing. I have done it where I've gone, okay, well, I got this Alphonse I needed, woohoo, and I removed the blocker that they had that was a double blocker, which allowed me to win the game. It was a super risky play, but it was a play I thought was worth taking. In a lot of situations, you can find yourself in that boat as well. So keep in mind, yes, it is risky. It's probably stupid to do it, but who doesn't like to gamble?
Right. You respect the gamble, and if you win, you look cool doing it. So it's all
exactly.
It's all
and if you lose, you blame the card for being stupid. That's all.
No, I'm right there with you. Now, talking about this deck, we see some pretty cool effects. We see lots of recursion. That's really awesome. Now, what would you say as far as how this competes against some of those top meta decks? How would you rate the power level of this deck?
So, funny enough, all of the tier 1 decks right now in NA are heavy removal decks or Sukuna, which is not really a heavy removal deck, but I gain value deck.
Yep.
Against all of these decks, this is fantastic against them. If your entire game plan is, I'm gonna kill your characters, please and thank you. Oh boy, this is going to be fun for me and horrible for you. Because a lot of good players don't know what to prioritize when they're removing. And as someone who has played this deck probably a good 30 matches at this point, I don't know what the correct answer is for what you should prioritize on removing. Scar is the number one. Everything else is kind of like it did its job. I got my win played. It is fantastic into those decks to the point where I think its worst matchup out of all of them is blue JJK because color trigger is a thing, and you do have 3.5Ks. I think that one is probably close to a 45-55 in favor of Sukuna. Their high roll beats you, your high roll beats them. It's the exact same type of scenario. However, against all the spam removal decks, the only one I think that this doesn't have a 60+% win rate against is Squad Zero. But if Squad Zero does not see its shrine on turn 2, you're going to steamroll them so quickly.
I can see that. Even with as the resident Purple Code Gias player, I did play a few matches against this, and using your Alphonse Nullify Impact is the freest block ever because the recursion you get there, sack them all day long.
3.5 is so brilliant against Code Gias. I love it.
It is the most annoying thing ever because wasting a -1K feels like such a waste, and I can't.
Oh no, you killed my Alphonse.
Yeah, you bring them right back. We saw this with Bambi's and other recursion decks. So, no, it's definitely very strong, especially with Impact. I mean, it's freest blocks you ever get. You just bring them right back.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a lot of value there. Now, against those decks, do you play any differently as far as certain matchups? Have you found yourself playing any different strats, or is it more or less pretty linear regardless of what you're facing?
Yes. If I'm playing blue Sukuna, I am not going to allow myself to start chipping away for early points of damage because I am terrified of blue color trigger just tempoing me out of the game. I want to outvalue them. And the funny thing is, in this deck, you can outvalue them. You are very frequently going to be saving this Edward in that matchup to specifically reanimate Alphonse. And you're going to be heavily milling yourself with Edward, the 3-drop, in order to get to those Alphonses. As soon as you're able to set up with that, you are prioritizing making sure your front line is filled with 4Ks over anything else against them, to the point where they now have to be playing Nanami in order to bottom deck your Alphonse. If they're playing Nanami, congratulations, you have it. But I have not been that hurt by Nanami with this deck. You have so much search, so much self-mill. Okay, I'll find it again. I'll get another one. But against the other decks like Code Gias, I don't play any differently. Oonga boonga, brother. Just bring it in. Smash. I will say the one caveat to that is I always block them if I can with Alphonse, if it has impact. That's it.
It's the freest block.
That's how you win. You go, oh no, I'm not at 3 life on turn 4.
And then you bring him right back, much to my frustration as a Code Geass player.
Absolutely. But for Squad 0, it's literally search for Scar. Heavy search for Scar. I will pay life to search for Scar against that matchup. Depriving them of sideline is so soul-crushing to them. You can get to the point, unless they are at a double shrine setup, or palace, as they call it. I call all of them shrine, but palace.
That's fair.
If they don't have a double setup with that, you can get them to a point where they're only going to be able to full kill something one time with a Raid Ichigo. And the other ones turn into 5-drop vanilla 4Ks. It's so soul-crushing to have Scar.
Oh, for sure. Now, with this deck and FMA being new, there was some... Obviously, this deck didn't make as much of a splash in JP, but JP also has a billion sets. Pick your poison as far as the most impressive ones. How do you feel about this deck, and then comparing yourself to the other FMA decks in our current meta?
Listen, this deck is horrible against the other FMA decks. It is probably the worst FMA deck in rare battles. Greed is a 5k. It blocks you for days. Yes, you can remove the blocker once, but you don't have enough consistent impact to get over that after that. You have Bradley, 4.5k. The father strategy, you have Scar or you lose. You have Briggs, which is terrifying if they high roll you. And then on top of all of that, you have King Bradley, who, if the player is smart, they're going to prioritize removing Alphonse, not King Bradley, Mustang. They're going to prioritize removing this Alphonse from the game instead of putting it to your sideline. In FMA, this is a horrible deck. In our meta in NA, holy cow, is this deck good unless you run into one of those multi-attack or double damage aggro decks.
No, I would agree with that. I think any of those double damage 2 or multi-attack decks, if they pop off right, you don't get an active trigger, you don't get a special, any good trigger, you're in a lot of trouble.
Where's my color? Give me a color.
When turn 3 Kirito, they do 4 attacks and you don't get a single trigger, you cry a little bit. When your turn 3 starts and you have 3 health. Good luck.
It's really cute because then you attack with a 3.5 and a 4K.
Just use your Gate of Truth to search out for Scar. You'll be fine.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, do you see this becoming a potential top tier deck? We see the path of upcoming releases to the end of the year. There is always the Bandai might remove a card or so. How do you feel on the path forward with this deck?
I feel if you are in a position where 90% of your games are going to be against what our current tier 1 is, which is Sukuna, Gwain Gurren, potentially Todo, maybe not Todo, and Squad 0, this deck is so incredibly good against all of them. It is super, super, super strong. But as soon as the meta begins shifting into a more aggro-centric meta, it is not more aggro than the other aggro decks. It is more resilient than the other aggro decks. That's the issue with it. However, if you're a fan of the deck and you really learn how to pilot it and you get really solid with your Edwards and your raids and stuff, yeah, you're going to be able to just catch people by surprise and obliterate them with just a slightly above average draw.
Do you feel this is a pretty beginner friendly deck?
I do not. I think if you play this at its lowest floor of skill requirement, the deck is going to feel unplayable and not very good. It's when you start playing it at a higher floor, going, this is the base quality I need to be playing this deck at, that it becomes insane to play against. It is super thematic. I mean, you're losing cards in order to gain advantage. It's literally equivalent exchange happening inside of the game. The cards are brilliant. They are beautiful. They are super fun. I mean, let's be honest, Edward is one of the few main characters in all of anime that are actually good characters. But
are you trying to tell me Sung Jin Woo is not a good character?
What's that?
Come on now.
I don't even know what. Oh yeah, the aura, whatever. Captain Ginyu had more aura than that guy. So if you're going to dedicate the time into this deck and you're a fan of it and you're willing to put in the work to get good with it, oh, is it going to reward you? And then some.
So what would you say someone wants to try this deck for the first time? Is there any big tips or one thing they need to know as they get their feet wet with this deck?
Yes, you do have to buy the starter decks in order to get these guys, or buy them online. 2 starter decks get you the majority of everything you need outside of the Winry, this Edward, and this Alphonse.
Otherwise, everything else is pretty straightforward. Booster packs, all that jazz.
Those cards specifically are the only ones that are booster pack and jazz. Everything else you can get from the starter deck.
Yeah, that's that easy to get.
yeah, just the SRs.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, super easy. As long as you don't get all the purple ones. Are there any other tech cards that you were kind of on the fence on that you might add? I know Scar's one of them. Is there anything else? I've seen some people run Automail. I think it gives impacts.
No, I don't think Automail is a card that's really worth playing. In my opinion, if we get into a more aggro-centric meta, and you are dedicating into this, you drop the Let's Go Home for Automails, but that's it. I think Let's Go Home is the tech card that I'm running, and the other tech of this deck is Scar. There's not a lot of other cards that have any amount of synergy with it. There's not a lot of other cards that really reward you for playing them, or have anything that is soul-crushing for your opponent to have to deal with. These 2 cards are really it, and then the extra impactor. I'll be honest with you, I've won more games being able to tap their character than I have by having impact.
Yep, no, it definitely can come in pretty clutch. Now, we've seen set 2s get released here. We saw it for Bleach, JJK, SAO is on the horizon. If they make a set 2 for FMA, what is one card you'd like to see, or one effect you'd like to see? Is there anything else you feel like the deck's just one more thing would really help it out with, some boost, some expansion cards?
Give Alphonse a raid. Please give Alphonse a raid. He deserves one. He is such an amazing card. We have so many good support packages, and make it something synergistic with Sideline as well. That would be so brilliant for this deck. And in all honesty, that's it. I wouldn't really want to see anything else happen inside of this deck. Maybe a more versatile 0-drop than Winry, but in all honesty, I'm really loving having her in the deck as another outlet to just buff up my 3.5s to 4s. Well, 4.5, but still.
Right, of course. Well, cool. Again, huge thanks to Joey kind of breaking us down the Elric Brothers deck. You want any closing notes here at the end?
Yes, don't forget to follow me. I am on Twitch, ProDmJoey. I am also on YouTube's, where I'm predominantly at ProDmJoey, and you can find me in the description down below and in the Rumble Rama Discord, where I'm always playing with people, always very happy to sit down and help out a newbie get into the game.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerry, for the time kind of going over the FMA Elric Brothers deck. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Goodbye.